Welcome to Confession Corner, where we deep dive into the real stories that are hidden in the depths. If you're new here, hit that like button, share this with your friends, and subscribe. We post 3 to 4 times a week. Ready to dive in? Let's get started. Campers of Reddit, what is the scariest, creepiest, most disturbing thing that has happened to you in the woods? When I was younger, around 14 or 15 years old, my family used to camp at a state park. Every night my friend and I would walk through the woods. We called this the ritual. This particular night we decided to walk further into the woods than usual. We had flashlights beat. We liked to try and navigate through the woods with them turned off. We were about half a mile from the nearest campsite when we heard soft whispering behind us. Obviously, we hit the flashlights and spun around. Didn't see anything, so we kept walking and we hear it again. This time we stop and look around a bit before we decided to head back to our campsite. Then we see what's whispering. It's a lady crawling on the ground whispering just random words. She was wearing dark clothes and was covered in dirt. When she sees that we notice her, she stands up and declares that she is looking for her campsite. We ended up walking her back to the campground and tried helping her find her group. Turns out she was just super drunk, high, and got lost trying to find a bathroom. Her friends didn't even notice she was missing, and if we didn't go that far into the woods, she would have been lost all night. It was pretty creepy. Not exactly camping, but kind of. I lived in a very small town once when I worked from my laptop. Like, population 200 small. I was in a small cabin in the woods, though next to the highway. One day I was walking my dog and heard 2 gunshots somewhere nearby. Didn't think much of it. It's a hunting area and it's kind of redneck-like. The next day or the day after, a truck pulls up. I don't even know anyone in this town, so it's weird and I'm put off. Guy calls me over, says he's my neighbor, asks if I heard the shots. I said, yeah. He claims it was his neighbor taking pot shots at his house over a land dispute. Doesn't ask me to be a witness for him or anything, just if I heard. Okay, seems really odd to me. Never met this guy before, and when I say neighbor, I mean 500 meters to 1 kilometer away out of sight. Guy sees my dog digging somewhere unimportant, and all of a sudden starts trying to tell her not to do that. Gets out and she's iffy of him, says here watch. Calls her over, grabs her and tries to do the stupid fucking Cesar Chavez dominance, hold the dog on their back thing, for really no fucking reason. She starts yelping. I'm like, dude, stop. He asked me whether I have any guns myself. I say no. Says he is a great dog trainer. He asked me to go over and mow his lawn, and please ensure to bring your dog. In the strangest way, just like that. Please ensure you bring my dog's name. I can't describe it, but his mannerisms and the way he talked was just plain creepy, especially that line. He leaves soon after, and I'm thinking, fuck, I just told this guy not only that I heard the gunshots, but that I'm unarmed here. How do I even know it was his neighbor like he claimed, and not in fact that this weird dude has shot someone at his home and is trying to see who might have heard or witnessed? I wouldn't go to his house. Not a fucking chance. Horrible feeling. Then he kept showing up asking why. Calling and texting asking why. I gave him my number before realizing how weird he was. Really adamant I go over there. Turns out the guy's a total alkie, lost his wife, lost his job, lost everything. Very dangerous mental state. Nothing to lose. The small store owners in town explained the guy to me. He's apparently the most hated guy in the valley. Bad reputation. I'm now really freaked out. I found it very hard to sleep after that. Cabin in the woods, nobody nearby that would hear any commotion, ample angles for the place to be approached from the woods, and just a can of bear spray and a knife. And the guy knows I have no guns. I would be kept up for hours listening at night for any movement outside, as it was dead silent there. One night, middle of the night, my dog starts to growl. Then growls more. I don't hear anything, but it didn't matter. Every room in that cabin had a window but the bathroom. I just got up, grabbed the knife plus bear spray, and locked myself in that fucking bathroom for hours listening. I think I eventually fell asleep in there. I don't think I've ever felt that kind of dread. I just pictured this lunatic sneaking up with a shotgun to take me out, for maybe having heard him murder someone with a gun days earlier. Fuck, it was just awful. I moved, but unfortunately the new landlords were equally creepy and even started trying to steal my dog, even though they had 3. Literally, I heard them discussing it, how they had to make themselves the in crowd so that she'd want to be with them, and hand-feeding her dog food when they thought I wasn't looking. Must have just been the small town thing. Totally strange people in that town for the most part. They went to market one morning. I packed all my shit into my uninsured van with no license and my pup and fucking bailed that town and never looked back. Good God, it was hills have eyes shit, mates, I'm telling you. I work as a counselor at a summer camp in Southern California. The place is very out in the woods, so we get all sorts of animals wandering through, from deer and foxes, coyotes howling in the distance, to a mountain lion that's been spotted in the area. The camp also occasionally has a spiritual, haunted vibe. There are a couple creepy and weird spots, some things in the area that we think show the place has been inhabited in the past, ghost stories, etc. One night after putting my kids to bed, I was standing outside our cabin talking to another counselor when my friend Sadie comes running by with her entire teenage girls' cabin, maybe 12 of them, all dressed in black and freaking the fuck out. She screams at me that she thought they heard a ghost, and once her kids were asleep, she'd meet me back here to explain and investigate. Sadie is normally the level-headed type not to freak out easily, so this really caught my attention. She meets me back by my cabin maybe 30 minutes later and explains what was going on. She took her campers on a night hike, had them all dress up in black and pretend to be ninjas. All was fun until on their way back, they passed a particularly dark part of the trail when they heard off in the distance, just beyond the tree line, what sounded like a faint help from a small child. But each time they heard it, it got more and more distorted until it no longer sounded human, yet still sounded like a child yelling help in the distance. Naturally, they freaked the fuck out and ran. Me and Sadie decide to be good counselors and go investigate the sound of a small child yelling help. As we walk over to the area of the trail, we hear it. It didn't sound like a small child anymore. It sounded like a demon screeching out its best impression of a child, and it didn't sound like it was coming from any point source, but more was coming from an entire mountainside. We booked it back to the safety of the main part of camp, where we tell this story to anyone who will listen. The next day, the camp director had a meeting where they told us to tell our campers not to freak out at the sound of bobcats in the forest. They are harmless, but do make a high-pitched yelping sound at night. Our friends wouldn't let us live that one down all summer. This was not hiking, but it was in a remote place in the woods. My uncle built a house out on some acreage he has that is pretty far out there. There is not another house within 2 miles of his at least, and most of that is woods and cow pastures. But his place is beautiful. He built it all by hand and has a wonderful wraparound deck, perfect for family get-togethers. We were all out there, probably 20 adults and 5 or 6 kids for a party one day. It was one of those summer times when it is blazing hot, but the light breeze is cool enough you do not notice it after a while. I had been there hanging out all day when I was asked to run into town and grab some more groceries, so I packed up and headed out. Got the groceries and everything was fine. As I drove back, it was starting to get dark, and it was at a time of year when dark comes fast. It was pitch black out there when I finally arrived. As I pull up, I notice something is sitting in front of my car, facing the house. It was not disturbed by my headlights, but it does glance back at me once. It is a fucking panther, just chilling there, watching the party. And as I sit there for a second watching it, I notice that it has specifically placed itself near the edge, where all the kids are running around. After I have my headlights on it for a minute or so, it kind of looked back at me again as if to say, okay, I was caught. Oh, well. And then it gave the most human-looking sigh and just walked off into the woods. I sat there for a bit before building myself up to getting out of my car and going to the party and telling everyone. When I was a kid around 8 or 9, my mom, grandma, brothers, and I went camping at a small camping about 2 hours from the town we lived in. We went there a lot and even had a particular campsite we had slowly built up over the years. On this particular trip, we had my aunt and uncle's dogs with us since they were doing military tours. They were both well-trained bird dogs, but usually really calm and friendly. The first night on this particular trip, and Star starts growling in the tent at about 1 in the morning. My mom, thinking something is outside arms herself, and investigates with the dogs. As she gets out the tent, Star and Ariel would not let her move to the other edge of the campsite, and both get into attack position while herding my mom towards the car. This is while also keeping themselves in front of the tent. By this point, we are all up and with a group of kids under 10 freaking out. For a reason she can't even explain today, my mother packs up camp and gets us all into the car to head home. After about 10 minutes out of the campsite, a car starts following us, and the dogs get in the back and just growl. By this point, everyone was in borderline panic mode, and my brothers were crying the entire car ride home. As the town came into view, you have to cross a huge bridge to drive in, and the car was still following us. And as a kid, you make stories to yourself that nothing is wrong, and the car behind you is just full of scared people too. Yet as we start across the bridge, the car stops and just turns around, speeding back the way we came. We stopped at a gas station, and everyone was near meltdown mode, and my mom goes in to get cigarettes. But Star would not let her back into the car until she could see her clearly. This and a camping trip a few years later convinced me camping is no longer my thing. Was up hunting on my way out to my blind before sunup. Kept hearing footsteps behind me on the path that would stop when I did. I would stop every 15 yards or so, how my dad taught me to walk through the woods in the morning to break up the sound a bit, and I would look around trying to see what I was hearing. Skip forward 20 minutes and I make it to my blind, zip up the door and sit down. Footsteps got super close, so I made a fairly loud noise, and I heard it run up the hill behind me and stop. Then I heard a series of different howls. Wolves. I had wolves stalking me at 4:30 a.m. Terrifying. So, not me. But my brother took my dog for a walk in the woods one night. We live on a farm in UK, and the woods start about 15 meters from our front door. Around 10 p.m., my brother returns saying he's lost the dog. Great. He immediately explained to me that his phone died in the middle of the woods, and he had the dog, Chester, right by his side. As he looked down, a circular beam of light surrounded his feet for a split second before it shot off in one direction. The dog was completely gone, so after he hurried back home to get me, I went out into the woods to find him. And about a 20-second walk into the darkness, I find Chester behind a big tree. The weirdest part was he did not seem his usual self. He was walking a snail's pace with his tail between his legs. He's ran around these woods on his own at night most of his life, with no fear, but this time he was almost trembling. He walked past me into the house and laid down on his bed, and that was it. This will get buried, but I have never gone camping or out into the woods at night after this trip. A few friends and I had a long weekend, 5 days off from school, and we decided to go camping in the North Georgia mountains. We packed a big 10-person tent. There were 5 of us, 2 guys, 3 girls, and loaded up my buddy's truck. He and I had some experience being outdoors, camping, hiking, hunting, and he's an Army vet, so we packed really well and had all sorts of amenities like a propane stove, grill, fold-up cots, portable shower. We were in it for the whole weekend. We left Wednesday afternoon and parked the truck in a small town and started hiking into the woods to find a spot. It was a fairly normal hike until we got about 4 to 5 miles in. The first time we noticed something strange was when we came into a little clearing in the woods with a big pond, tiny lake in it. We stepped into the open area and everything stopped. No birds chirping, no squirrels running around. Even the clouds and wind seemed to stop moving. My buddy and I both thought, well, shit, there's got to be a predator nearby, and took out our handguns. It's the law in Kennesaw, just in case. I've never seen a bear in Georgia, so we figured it was a mountain lion or maybe some coyotes. My friend and I were looking around the edge of the clearing, and he grabbed me. He nodded across the water, and when I looked, I saw what seemed to be a woman standing just at the tree line. She was maybe 150 yards away. We assumed she must live somewhere nearby, and so we continued walking past the water and clearing. As we headed back into the woods, I looked over my shoulder at where she was standing, but she was gone. The sounds of the forest returned once we got into the trees. We made a campsite about 2 miles past that as it was getting late, and we didn't want to be stuck building camp in the dark. We got everything unpacked and set up and built a fire, popped a couple beers and sat down to hang out. There was a girl I was interested in on the trip, and we had been flirting, so after a few beers and the sun was down, we snuck away from the fire under the pretense that she wanted help setting up part of the tent. We started fooling around, and after a few minutes she stopped and looked at me funny. I asked what was wrong, and she said nothing. It just got really quiet. We both quickly dressed and headed back outside to the fire. The others hadn't noticed anything strange and didn't mention anything wrong except joking with us that it took us a long time to fix the tent. On the first morning, we found that the propane stove had been turned on but not ignited and had gone empty overnight. None of us had used it. The second morning, we noticed some things had gone missing. A lantern we left outside by the fire was gone. My crush's sweatshirt she left on a little folding chair on Chasher's stool. We figured we just misplaced things or someone had used them and put them somewhere else. During the second full day, Friday, we were looking for a waterfall that we read online was in the area. We were following the river upstream when everything went silent again. My buddy nudged me while we were walking and indicated up to the top of a hill next to the river. I looked up through the trees and was just able to make out the figure of the same woman, same clothes and all, just standing. I couldn't tell if she was looking at us or not, but she was just standing there. My buddy told the girls he thought he saw a mountain lion following us and was going to go scare it off. He hustled up the hill making a lot of noise and came back about 10 minutes later. He said he scared it off to the girls, but told me aside that the woman wasn't there when he got up there. We found the waterfall and put it out of our minds as the girls decided to skinny dip in the river, and titties can solve anything. We hiked back to camp and found it a mess. It wasn't totally trashed, but it was clear something had gotten into our stuff. We told the girls it was probably raccoons. We both took our guns to bed with us. That night shit went sideways. I remember waking up because my crush was squeezing my arm. We had been sleeping cuddled up together. I opened my eyes and she hushed me before I could ask what was wrong. There was complete silence all around the tent. I looked across the tent and my buddy was sitting halfway up looking around. We both stayed awake for the next 2-ish hours until the sun started coming up and then packed our stuff and we all headed out. The entire hike back into town was eerily silent. There were a couple points I thought I saw the woman through the trees, but never got a clear sight of her. We avoided the lake completely and got back to the truck in what seemed like half the time it took to get out to the camp. After we were safely on the road back home, the girls and my buddy all started to tell everyone about moments they thought they heard, saw the woman all weekend, but were too freaked out to mention it out loud, like she would go away if we ignored her. The wild part was none of us could describe her face. It's almost like it was blurry. No idea who she was, but I've never been camping or hiking at night since. In the late 80s, I was in my early 20s, and 2 friends and I went camping in Central Florida. 2 of us were working for the Park Service at that time, so we were able to camp for free in other parks in the state. Both of us had done a lot of camping before. Me, I grew up camping with my family on every single vacation, all over the state. For the other friend with us, this was her first camping trip ever. We were camping in the youth area, which was empty that weekend and was quieter and more isolated than the regular campsites. Later in the afternoon on the second day of our trip, we were all sort of spread out in the area of the campsite, being within shouting distance, but enjoying a little solitude. I was collecting firewood. Every now and then I'd kind of feel like someone was watching me. I'd look around, see and hear nothing, and then shrug it off and go back to what I was doing. Later on around sunset, We had the bonfire started. One of the rangers who lived on site about a quarter-mile away came over with a truckload of firewood and a six-pack of beer. We all sat around talking for a while. Well after dark, we could suddenly hear what was probably a bunch of teenagers fooling around on one of the trails a couple miles away. Since the trails were closed at sunset, the ranger and my co-worker drove off to shoo them back to their campsites. My other friend and I were just relaxing around the fire, talking a little, mostly enjoying the night and the peace and quiet. All of a sudden, I had a cold chill go over me. The hair stood up on the back of my neck, and out of nowhere, I was terrified. I tried to ignore it, but it kept building. I didn't say anything to my friend. I didn't want to scare her. Then I glanced over at her just as she glanced at me, and she said, "Do you feel that?" I said, "Yeah." "I think maybe we'd better go to the car." We both felt like we were in deadly danger, but no idea from what. We started walking at a casual pace, not wanting to appear scared. Then halfway to the car, we looked at each other again and simultaneously broke into a dead run. We reached the car, jumped in and locked the doors and turned on the headlights. I sat there with my pistol, feeling like it was totally inadequate for whatever was out there. We both just sat looking straight ahead. We were afraid to look around. I had the feeling at one point that if I turned my head and looked out the window, I'd see something that would drive me insane. I don't know how long we sat there. It was probably just a few minutes, but it felt like forever. Then it just left. We could actually feel it going away. A few minutes after that, the other two came back in the truck. We kind of laughed it off afterward, but I'll tell you, I've never been that scared before or since. I've faced a lot in my life, and nothing has so completely terrified me like that. I don't know what it was, but I'm still convinced we were in terrible danger. That's it for today's confessions. Hope you enjoyed. Like, share, and subscribe. It helps us keep going. Thanks, and see you in the next one. Toodles.